Hello and welcome to my thoughts on the release plans for Bannerblade 2 Bannerlord, and it is coming out on October 25th, and you can also get it on console and all that stuff. And this video is not sponsored, by the way. I'm just mentioning it just in case you don't know. And the footage in the background is from one of my recent series. Alright, so first of all, I'm just going to be going through a bunch of the features that they are planning on adding to the game. The first thing that they're planning on adding are banner formations. In other words, the banners in the game will be equipable items that players and AI heroes can use to benefit the formations they lead in battle. And alongside them, we will also be introducing new crafting pieces with cloth attachments. These won't just allow players to create weapons with an extra bit of flair, they will add to the overall visual experience as troops are re-equipped to carry them as well. Alright, I think that's great. That's fantastic. Anything that you can actually do to increase the immersion of the game is significantly valued, and I like this a great deal. However, as we may get into as we move on to the next portion of this video where we talk about sieges, I'm going to mention why I feel like immersion is definitely something that really needs to have a pretty big focal point, needs to be focused on quite a bit. Anyway, as I said, we're going to get into that in just a second. And apparently each of the 53 towns will be unique, and the pool for castles, battle terrains, and smaller locations like hideouts will also continue to be expanded. And they also go on to say the world map will also see further improvements as well. Alright, so obviously that's perfect. Absolutely wonderful. I love anything that they can do to make sieges, especially because, let's face it, when you get into mid-game, late game, all you're going to be really doing is siege warfare. You're going to be doing a lot of siege warfare. And any single time I go into a castle, for example, and I see the exact same siege layout, and let me just hold things back a little bit here. I actually don't mind that. I don't mind seeing a copy of another castle, because let's face it, if it's from the same faction, it might actually make sense, because maybe the same builder went over there and built that castle as well. You don't know, sometimes that's just how things go, but obviously if it's exactly the same, it can get a little bit samey. So I'm very much liking the fact that they are going to be making them unique. And yeah, they're going to be continuing to make castles, battle terrain, and smaller locations like hideouts. They're going to continue to expand that. So that's really nice. And then if we go on to the fundamental, there's a fundamental point here about the AI movement system. And they say this is basically helping the AI to move through difficult terrain, for example, like in sieges. And it also apparently improves issues with congestion. Okay, so that's actually looking really good. As we know, if you've been watching my videos or if you've been playing Bannerlord yourself, you know that sometimes the AI can get very stuck. There are a number of different situations where that can happen. Also, they go on to say here, it does so through a range of physics adjustments, better situational understanding, and manners, in other words, waiting on allies ahead, and by shifting away from a binary cardinal input and towards a partial 360-degree one. Think keyboard versus controller. Now, here's the thing. For me personally, this is good, alright? I think this is great. This is a wonderful, wonderful addition. However, as I said before, and this is the thing that I wanted to actually mention in regards to the immersion factor, there's one glaring issue with sieges at the moment in Bannerlord. The reinforcement system. The reinforcement system is a little bit immersion breaking, or a lot, dependent on who you are and what you think about it. But for me personally, whenever you are in a siege, you get onto the battlements, you are eliminating archers and enemies left, right, and center, and then when your own forces have a pretty significant advantage, the enemy is dwindling. You go down into the courtyard or into the streets of the town, And then all of a sudden, you see the enemy spawning out of nowhere, out of thin air. They're just right there on top of you, and you think to yourself, oh, well, I mean, that's very immersion breaking, but they've got banners, so that is, that's good, I guess. I'm poking a bit of fun here, because for me personally, I think that the whole, enemy units spawning out of thin air is really something that needs to be addressed quite a lot. I think that is really, really important. There's also something that happens in a siege defense as well, and this is something that maybe will be improved with the better situational understanding that they are hoping to add to the game as well, or to the siege AI in general, where if you're in a siege defense in Bannerlord, sometimes if you're defending on one particular part of the battlements, let's say you're defending on the left flank or something like that, and you have a bunch of enemies coming in because they have their siege tower, right up against the wall, and they're flowing in, and it's really, they're just overwhelming your forces really easily, right? As soon as that happens, and they have eliminated all of your allies, they just stop. They don't move. They just stop. They just stop there, and they don't do anything. They just stand there, they guard that particular position, because elsewhere in the siege, because the AI has only built one siege tower, let's just say that they've only built one, usually they do, they're having issues. They're having issues getting into the keep. So, their battering ram has either been destroyed or has destroyed the gate, but then the enemies just basically give up on going through the gate in general. And then on the other side, you have a siege ladder or a pair of siege ladders, and they're trying to get up there, but it's impossible. The AI is not particularly good at getting into those particular places. When there's a really, really tight bottleneck, it can be very difficult for them. But the main glaring problem is that the forces that have already breached the defenses, they just stand there doing nothing. They just idle, and sometimes they will lay a bit of a pursuit against enemies that, or your allies, shall we say, that get too close to them. But for the most part, they don't. They just kind of stand there. They fight anyone that gets within range. But if you're a ranged character like I had in my most recent series, the Land of Seeker series, if you're an archer, you can just stand there and endlessly shoot arrows into them. And most of the time, they're not even going to bother defending. So that, in my opinion, is a really big deal. So on the one hand, you have the reinforcements. The reinforcements are going to be a big issue, them spawning out of thin air. That is, in my opinion, something that needs to be changed. And the second point is when you're in a siege defense and the enemy just does not take the initiative. They are not as offensive as they could be, because the AI could actually take things really easily with a lot of aggression. If they had more aggression, they would be able to really be quite a threat. But as it stands right now, not so much. Anyway, okay, that's the siege stuff over with. They're also adding voiceovers. Okay, so I'm very much loving this. This is great. That also increases immersion. And they say here, they're quite happy to say that AI characters will soon receive the first iteration of voiceovers for storyline dialogues and greetings. Conversations in general also benefit from a range of new and updated facial expressions. Ah yes, I remember those facial expressions from the very first version of the game. They were very funny. But that they have a charm. They have a charm to them, I gotta say. They do have a charm. Anyway, yeah, so I think voiceovers, that's all great, all very well and good. But as I say, in my opinion, more pressing matters, and I personally don't mind whether there is a voiceover or not. But yeah, anyway. Then they are going to be talking about what happens in the post-release. So in other words, what happens after the game has been released to the full version, and it comes out of early access on Steam, of course. So now what they say here is, oh yeah, they're going to be doing something. Okay, so they explored a prototype of the player not just clearing, but taking over common areas from criminals. This will be coming to the game. It will work similarly to other enterprises like workshops and caravans that provide players with passive income, but will also have its own twist. As they are not exactly legal ventures, you will need to deal with the crime system. Yet it's not all that bad. Operating from the shadows will allow you to keep going in hostile environments, and coupled with further Encyclopedia Fog of War updates, allow you to retain access to information you would otherwise not have. Alright, I'm gonna just, give you my thoughts on this. Okay, so I love the fact that they are increasing the criminal element in the game, because as it stands at the moment, roguery skill is secretly OP, okay, it's secretly overpowered, really, really good, but the perks themselves, I can take them or leave them. They are really not very necessary at all in a standard character build. The only thing that I take roguery for is to increase the amount of loot that you gain from vassal battles. And let me tell you, you can make millions just literally by leveling up your roguery skill. It is so incredibly useful. So that's obviously the one thing, but that's a passive benefit, and none of the perks, as far as I can tell, very few perks, let's just say, are going to be worth taking. And I'm very much hoping that the enterprises, for example, the workshops, are going to provide slightly higher revenues, because as it stands right now, the workshops are not even worth it, I think. Maybe not even worth even bothering with them, because they usually give you between 40 and 100, if you're lucky, every single day. And you have to invest around 15,000. So I don't even know how long that would actually take you to recoup all of that money that you've invested already. So I can only hope that the criminal element here is going to pay you more than the legal method of making passive income. I obviously have no idea what they're planning on doing, but I can only hope that it's going to be a little bit more efficient than the workshops themselves, because they are very frustrating to buy and not very useful, at least in my opinion. All right, so yeah, and apart from that, obviously, the encyclopedia updates retain access to information you would not otherwise have. Okay, I don't know why that would really make any difference, to be honest. I don't know why that would matter, to be fair. I really don't, because I've never really used the encyclopedia for anything particularly, but I'm going to be excited to see what they actually do with it. And then they go on to say, in addition to this, you will see the introduction of more specialized combat options. For one, players are going to be able to sally out and launch a surprise attack on besiegers in order to destroy their siege engines. This will take place in existing siege locations, but follow a separate set of rules. Alright, so obviously this is very much a case of just turning the whole, AI defense from Warband on its head and allowing the player to do exactly the same thing. I like this. This is fantastic. Just basically giving the player more options in any situation, in any scenario. That is going to be a thumbs up in my book. Any single time they can do that, that is wonderful, because the amount of choice is the reason why Mount and Blade is so fun to play, because you feel like you actually have so many options. And that's what I felt like when I first started playing Warband back in 2012. I really had no idea what I was doing, and I thought to myself, wow, what do I do? There's so much to do, so many different options, so many different things, units, people to interact with, so many tasks, and so on. So very much liking the fact that they are giving us slightly more options in regards to sieges. And they're also now, and now this is going to be maybe a bit of a controversial opinion on my part, but let's see if you agree. The regular siege assault. Okay. They are working on a range of balance changes to tip the scales more in favor of siege towers and rams. As I've said multiple times in my series as well, siege towers are very vulnerable to catapults, really easy to destroy them. Rams are even easier to destroy than siege towers, and now they're making it possible for the AI, as well as yourself, to be able to push ladders off the walls even when there are enemies on them. Okay, so obviously, as I said before, every single siege that I have done in the last month or so, I have not built any siege towers or rams in Bannerlord. And that kind of shows exactly you know, they're not that useful, especially if the AI has catapults. If they have catapults, they're going to be able to destroy them way too easily. However, I feel like this change, while it is good, I think it is absolutely fantastic for them to do this change. I feel like it's going to make siege ladders almost impossible to use. And it's going to make it even more frustrating to do sieges, which in my opinion it shouldn't be. I feel like it should be a fun experience to do a siege, because you're going to, as I said at the very start of the video, you're going to be doing sieges a lot. There are many, many sieges to do, and it's going to be a huge problem if you have to build siege towers and rams every single time, and then you just have to cross your fingers and hope that the AI doesn't have any catapults behind the walls. Because if they do have some catapults, well, you know, kiss your siege towers and rams goodbye. The only thing you can really do with those is you can try to destroy them with your own siege, but then every single siege that you do in the game is going to be taking you multiple, maybe even multiple weeks. Because at the moment, you can basically just establish your siege camp, and then you can charge straight in, and then you have the siege ladders, and you can just use the siege ladders. And that has been the most efficient way of doing sieges for me recently. But with this, you're going to have to build, let's just actually see here. You're going to have to build siege towers, 2 siege towers, 1 battering ram. You're going to have to build a bunch of ranged siege as well. And don't get me wrong, I like the fact that they are encouraging the use of other siege equipment. I think that's fun, because being able to use a variety of things, that's always a fun thing to do, right? But the way that this is being done right now, I don't know whether it's really going to work as intended, and I think it's probably just going to make things more frustrating. But I can only hope that it's not going to do that. Anyway, let's move on. So they go on to say here, should your character grow too old and tired to continue the fight, a new location will allow them to hand over the reins to the next generation, or put an end to the clan. Whether a game over occurs due to a conscious choice like this, old age, or ill tidings, it deserves a bit of ceremony. To a good degree, the in-game cutscenes and cinematics provide that, yet wouldn't it be nice to look back at what you achieved over the years? This is where game over statistics will come in, tracking your every step, or at least some of them, and providing a tally when your game ends or you finish the storyline. Alright, so I obviously very much like this. Generally, I love detailed statistics in games because it allows you to see, oh, look at that, I actually, you know, traveled this far, or I interacted with this many people, or I killed this many people, I saved this many people, so on and so forth, you know, all that kind of stuff. Very much like that. And I like the fact that they are allowing you the ability to make a conscious choice to end your to hand over the reins, basically, to hand over the reins, like they said here, to the next generation. So now that's the thing. I'm not sure how this is going to work, because on the screenshot that they provided here, it says your clan is no more, children born 3, campaign playtime was 54 hours or something like that, and then at the very bottom it just says main menu. And I can only assume that this screenshot is when your clan is completely eliminated and you have no other heirs to take over. And in which case, yeah, that's obviously going to mean that that's a game over, basically, and you're going to need to go to the loading screen and load up the previous save if you don't want to do this or whatever. So I think that's okay, but I'd like to see what actually happens when you decide that your character is done, is way too old, or just generally from a roleplay perspective, maybe you want to make it so that when they reach, I don't know, age 50 or something, you hand over the reins to whoever else is within your clan, and then you play as them. I've actually never had that happen. I've never had my main character die or become too old to continue or anything like that, so I have no idea how that works. But that's the reason why I'm actually very much in favor of this, because I'd love to be able to see how it works. And yeah, that's going to definitely add a whole bunch of extra depth to the storytelling as well, and the various stories that players are going to have within the game, which I very much like. Alright, So they go on to talk about the replay editor and all that stuff. But for me personally, I mean, you can kind of, I mean, technically, they say content creators are going to be able to make records of their adventures using our replay editor. Okay, so yeah, for me personally, I don't know. I think this could be cool for cinematics, right? It could definitely be cool for cinematics, but for me personally, I'm not sure I'm going to use that at all, but maybe for other people, they're probably going to. Who knows? And then they go on to say, there are many more ideas that we are keen to explore as part of our regular development. Some of these are smaller topics like balance tweaks to our auto battle resolution. Oh yes, please do that. And companion variety, raiding, settlement projects, or multiplayer classes and modes. Okay, so companion variety. For me personally, I would very much love to see companions be a bit more impactful in Bannerlord. I know I've talked about this before, and it was a bit of a controversial subject because a lot of people were saying that they really like the Bannerlord companions. Other people were saying they really prefer the warband companions. And the way that I'm seeing it right now is that because Bannerlord has introduced the death system, and I'm talking about anyone can die, you know, vassals can die, your companions can die, and so on. Because of that, I feel as though the way that the system works, where your main character basically cannot do everything. You can't do everything, you can't spec into everything that you want to, because, of course, the game is trying to encourage you to use companions to fill those voids. For example, with, you know, surgery skill, or with steward skill, or spotting, or whatever, you know, one of the party skills that is going to help you in general. And I 100% get behind that. I love that. I love being able to, you know, have a companion that is going to be assisting you in that particular skill. However, the problem arises when they die, because what happens then? Let's say that you've been, you know, journeying around with this companion for, I don't know, 400 days, 500 days in-game. And then all of a sudden, they die in some random battle, and you've just lost your companion that has, I don't know, 250 in all of the wonderful party skills that you so desperately require to keep going, basically. And at that point, then you're going to think, oh, okay, so let me get another companion to replace them, right? So then you get another companion to replace them, and then what if they die after 150 days? You see what I mean? It's kind of like, I don't know, it feels sad and kind of frustrating, and yeah, it's just like, oh, you know, why does that happen, you know? I mean, of course, you know, death should definitely be a thing in the game. I think that's great. But the way that the companions are interacting with that, and the fact that you need certain companions to fill these roles, it kind of upsets the balance a little bit, in my opinion. But again, this is all in my opinion. You may disagree, and, you know, by all means, very, very well do that. Okay, so yeah, apart from that, they also go on to say, others concern improvements to control schemes and haptic feedback for controllers, I assume, modding tools, multiplayer taunts and maps, diplomacy decision-making. Diplomacy decision-making is definitely something that I would love to see changed. I was talking about this in one of my recent episodes, where when you're the leader of your very own faction and a vote comes up for a fief, you can only choose between three vassals, and you can't choose which vassals they are. And so it comes up, and then you think, oh, I don't really care about any of these vassals. I want to give the fief to whoever I want to give it to, you know what I mean? And at that point, it takes the control completely out of your hands. And as I was talking about before, I love the fact that Mount and Blade in general gives you so many options and generally gives you a lot of freedom. But in this particular case, when you're actually deciding who gets which fief, because in many cases this can very easily backstab you, because you never know if the person you're giving it to is actually going to be a decent person and actually stay with you or not. And so at that point, then you're going to be giving this fief to someone, and then they're going to think, you know what, I'm out of here. And then they leave you, and they defect, and they take your fief with them, and then they join your enemy, or something like that. You know, that has happened to me in the past, And I can only hope that that's not going to stay the way that it is, because in Warband you can basically give your fief to whoever you want, or give it to no one. Yeah, it's pretty cool that way. Unfortunately, the way that it works right now is a bit flawed, and well, at least in my opinion, and I think that it should get a bit of a rework, but we'll see if that happens. Otherwise, they go on to say, the clan, kingdom, life cycle, the mission, atmosphere, and weather system, as well as a variety of quality of life changes, such as party member sorting, and yet others will be more involved, such as the claimant quest and the multiplayer spectator mode. Okay, so the claimant quest, I'm very much looking forward to seeing how they do, what they do with that, because that's definitely missing from the game. I love that in Warband. I really, really can't wait to see exactly what happens in Bannerlord with that. And otherwise, they go on and say, to address the elephant in the room and some of the questions that came with it, we are certainly also open to DLCs, as they are a great way to provide you with additional content that does not fit into the base game's scope. Having said that, it will be some time before we release any DLC. It will be a gradual shift in development, and it will not be mutually exclusive, as the base game will also continue to receive updates. And in addition to that, there is no particular DLC that they want to announce right now. However, they are observing and discussing many of the topics that you're passionate about. Alright, so yeah, obviously no DLC right now. I personally hope that they will do something. I don't even know what I could suggest, to be honest, because the modding community is probably going to pretty much cover everything that I would want to play. But obviously they did a collaboration with a modding team way back in Warband, where they provided them with some resources and things like that, and they created Viking Conquest, and obviously Viking Conquest was very cool. It had a lot of nice ideas, and yeah, I'm not sure what they could do this time around, but I'm going to look forward to see what they decide, and yeah, we'll see. Hopefully it's going to be some free and some paid, nothing too, no, hopefully it's not all paid, let's just say that. Otherwise, that's probably going to be it for this video. Just wanted to go over the release plans that they had, and hopefully some of these topics have resonated with you a little bit, and well, let me know what you think about my thoughts and about the various things that are going to be happening in Bannerlord in the comments. I thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.